You were put on this earth to achieve your greatest self, to live out your purpose, and to do it courageously. Steve Maraboli. Over the years, Knox County Rescue has provided a place for men and women to find their purpose and to be a part of something bigger than themselves, to not only witness greatness, but to be a part of it. In the late summer of 1956, 15-year-old Charles Edward Howard dove into the swift-moving waters of the Holston River in Strawberry Plains and never came up. Knox County had no organized rescue services, and the search for the boy's body lasted for days. A local man, Costo McGee, led the search and sadly was there when the boy's lifeless body was recovered. After witnessing such tragedy, 10 of the volunteers met in Bill Dixon's garage to discuss the need for some sort of emergency rescue service in Knox County. Out of tragedy, these men under the guidance of Costo McGee came together and chartered the Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad in 1958. A local businessman, Fred Berry, took great interest in the men's efforts and in 1960 launched an ambulance response service. Together, Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad and Mr. Berry's ambulance service responded to emergency rescue calls spanning all of Knox and surrounding counties. Then in the late 1960s, esteemed physician Dr. Robert Lash recognized the work of Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad and the need to expand emergency rescue services. Dr. Lash led the introduction of emergency medical responses into the growing repertoire of rescue services and would be responsible for the launch of Lifestar Aeromedical Services 20 years later. After nearly a decade of emergency responses, the makeshift gear and equipment collected by the group of volunteers was in poor condition and in need of repair or replacement. The demand for services had grown and resources were slim. Recognizing the need, volunteer Bob Swabe initiated the squad's first fundraising campaign, and as a result, new equipment and tools were purchased. In 1970, federal highway legislatures forced the establishment of the emergency medical services systems in all 50 states. This mandate catapulted emergency services into the spotlight and inspired popular TV shows like Emergency, Adam 12, and Code Red. Emergency services continued to gain recognition throughout the 70s. News cameras and photographers often followed ambulances and rescue personnel looking for the next big story. Local agencies could no longer handle the amount of emergency calls coming in daily, and several public for-profit entities were formed. In 1977, Rural Metro Fire was established, and many of our volunteers found an opportunity to do what they love for a living. They enjoyed extensive paid training, health insurance benefits, and flexible schedules that enabled them to maintain volunteer hours with Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad. When the 80s rolled around, not only had many of our volunteers found employment with local fire agencies, Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad gained many highly skilled volunteers. 1980 turned out to be the year of interagency efforts. With the World's Fair set for 1982, every emergency response agency in Knox and surrounding counties were preparing for what would be the largest event held in Knoxville to date. The need for additional services was identified, and Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad once again expanded its services to include paramedics. Lifestar was launched as the area's first emergency response helicopter, and for the first time in local history, emergency services personnel could respond by land, water, and air. In 1985, the number of emergency services volunteers was at an all-time high. Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad embraced this enthusiasm and began offering more specialized training, acquiring more technical equipment, and worked with other agencies to modernize 911. With the tremendous interest in emergency services by the public, volunteer engagement continued to rise and the media attention spiked. Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad was featured in almost weekly in local papers and on local news stations. In 1988, Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad had grown significantly in numbers and in expertise, so much so that ambulance services providers looked to us to take on those response services as well. In 1989, Chief John Yu implemented designated specialty services and worked to expand specialty teams in the areas of cave and vertical, dive and swift water rescue, trench collapse, as well as heavy rescue. The formation of these specialty teams would forever set us apart from all other emergency response agencies in our region. The early 90s focused on the further evolvement of specialty services and expanding advanced rescue capabilities. Volunteers were in abundance, media attention continued, and training peaked. Both Knoxville Police and Knoxville Fire Departments turned to Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad for water, cave, and vertical, and heavy rescues. Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad was the essential emergency service agency and was deemed so by then Mayor Mike Ragsdale. The late 90s brought winds of change. Although the provision of services had reached an all-time high, membership engagement began to slack off. The media shifted their focus to other newsworthy stories, and funding and recognition became a challenge. On August 24, 1995, the accidental death of dive member Corey Berglund rocked us all. By the mid-2000s, Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad was struggling to provide the level of services that Knox County had grown to expect. The Board of Directors was tasked with increasing funding and building relationships with local foundations and partnering agencies. Both the City of Knoxville and Knox County governments were asked to lend their financial support through annual grants and other giving opportunities. For the first time, Knoxville Volunteer Emergency Rescue Squad submitted grant applications to these and other area foundations like United Way and the town of Farragut. As funding slowly increased, volunteer numbers diminished, but that did not stop the incredibly important work of the very dedicated and highly skilled rescue professionals. From plane crashes to vehicle extrication, from large animal rescues to deep water dive retrievals, from children locked in cars to technical cave and vertical rescues, we have always had the best of the best ready to respond and help save a life. Without our past, we would not be where we are today. Every year has brought learning and growth, setbacks and rebounds, evolvement and determination, and through it all, the people are what made Knox County Rescue great then and now. We are technically stronger than ever before. We have increased our inventory of equipment and vehicles by threefold, keeping us on the cutting edge of advancements in rescue services. We have expanded our partnerships with peer agencies, ensuring that Knox County Rescue is fully staffed and ready to respond 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Our leadership has set new standards of excellence through progressive training, community outreach, strong government relations, and the launch of a newly vamped cadet program. And we modernized our name to reflect it all. We are great. You, the members, are great. Together, we have worked for greatness. We are the helpers. We are Knox County Rescue, and we will be there in your most critical hour.